Hi, everyone. Welcome to the inaugural uh, video of the VeriDAO YouTube channel. I'm Litecoin Lisa, Lisa Mighty Davis, and this is my co-host, Jeff. You guys also know him as Litecoin Leader. Jeff, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Lisa. Good, happy to get started with this.
I am too. I'm so excited. And we have the one and only Reggie Middleton, the founder and inventor of Veritasium, as our first guest. So let's get started. Reggie, Mr. Middleton, thank you for joining us today.
Hello, how are you?
Very good, very good.
My daddy's name is Mr. Middleton. So
Well, we'll keep it at Reggie then. You can call me Lisa. Drop the formalities for today.
Mighty.
We want to talk a little bit about just the history of Veritasium and let people get to know you better. So I was reading through some of the information that I was given and saw that you grew up in Long Island. You earned your bachelor's degree at Howard University in 1990. So I just thought that was amazing. And you live in Brooklyn. I know you're a proud father. Can you tell us a little bit more about your history and upbringing and how you got into finance or tech?
Okay. Well, I was born from Philip and Barbara Middleton. I guess we can reveal that. They were immigrants from South Carolina. We came to New York and bore their first child, moi. I grew up in Long Island, suburban middle class life and working class middle class. It's hard to tell because when you're happy as a child, you think you have everything, and you're not aware of different strata in society until you leave the household. Here's some fun facts. I never knew a broken family outside of TV until I went to college. My parents like that.
That's sweet. That's very unusual nowadays, you know.
That's very good, except for my father passed away in 2013. And when you're like that with somebody, you need that other person. So um, for about a year and change, you're like, oh, mom handled that rather well. And then, I guess reality hit. But the lesson is, I really appreciate human family. Um, More than appreciate it, it's bedrock. It's, status quo for me. Um, I moved to Brooklyn after university, Howard in DC. I didn't pursue a master's degree. Uh, I am, believe it or not, anti-academic education.
Interesting.
Pro education, anti-academic education, primarily because I find academic education to be nothing but rote memorization. I like to use words that most people don't come across because keep you on your toes, right? I'm going to act like this. Another fun fact, in complete honesty, I'm running on 45 minutes of sleep. Oh,
You might get a little slap happy with us. So that is that there is a big trend, with COVID and all these things. People are pulling their kids out of school looking for alternatives, and they were also seeing what was happening in the public schools, where it really was a lot of that read rote memory. They were turning their kids into little Google boxes and not using critical thinking. And so it's really interesting to hear you point that out or bring that up, that you really do see that as an issue and something that you don't support.
yeah. If you Google search Reggie Middleton, public schools and Reggie Middleton education, you'll see I taught a lot in school.
Okay.
And my oldest son will be 30 in a month. My youngest turned 16 last Sunday. And all three of them, I have three, all three, I would go into the schools and I would teach. And my subject matter is very, very different. teaching global macroeconomics, valuation, investment strategy, risk-adjusted return, and I tell stories because I started.
Oh, I lost your mic.
Lost my. Can you hear me now?
Sorry, I think it was. I think I've got it taken care of. I think I've got. Sorry, I apologize.
What was the last thing you heard?
You go into your children's and you teach macroeconomics and lots of other big words that I kind of sailed right over my head.
I teach them what things are truly like. For instance,
Okay.
a popular lesson is what is money? And a lot of people say, oh, money is paper or things that you use to buy other stuff with, etc. And then I go through a lesson of what money, currency, or something that can be used for exchange of value really is. So I create a scenario where an atomic bomb goes off, it blows up all the supermarkets, damages a lot of houses, and destroys the banks. And a lot of people still have money. Some people still have a lot of wealth, stocks, etc. And all I have is a chicken bone with one drumstick left. And I say, well, who's the wealthiest person there? And they say, well, X, Y, and Z. I'm like, well, all the food is gone, right? A lot of people have a lot of money stacked in the house. The banks are gone. People have a lot of stocks, but I have one chicken bone left, right? I am now the wealthiest person there because now the value is accrued to that chicken bone because of supply, demand, scarcity, economic need.
Right. The change in society. We were watching a movie the other day, and it had like an ice age came through or something. And because of the change in society, because society had to change because of the environment, a homeless man became really valuable in the community because he had survival skills of the outdoors and how to eat and what to no, you burn the books because you need to stay warm and all this. So that whole idea of depending on the situation, money is something that has value. And that it's what we store our labor in to then be used at a later time to exchange for something we want or need. So that's great that you're sharing those life lessons for our future.
It's a very interesting exercise with the kids. They're like, this chicken bone, once I get drumstick, I'm like,
Yeah.
I find a drumstick quickly. So unfortunately, this is Kentucky Fried. Might not be the healthiest for you, but it gets across, right?
Yeah. That's something very tangible for them, for sure.
Started. We talked about right before the video started. This lesson popped up on Bloomberg right before I signed in. It said Russian oligarchs are rapidly transforming their wealth while they still can. And as I'm sure many probably know, the US and the EU are putting significant pressure via sanctions on Russian banks, large Russian energy institutions, and the Russian government and oligarch. And they're confiscating yachts and all types of large symbols of wealth. And so the oligarchs are rapidly, which they should have done this a couple of years ago, but rapidly looking to transform the character of their wealth from the assets and mansions and things that could be easily identified and confiscated to other things, which may lead into an interesting conversation, which we could go.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, we're having a little bit of feedback. Yeah, definitely seeing those, that privacy is becoming a huge issue. As these sanctions are coming out, people are, like you said, looking for safe havens for their wealth, for their assets. And it's spilling over outside of Russia and Ukraine, but into, Canada, the issues with people supporting truckers or different supports, ideas that they care about or people that they want to support. And then there's repercussions and blowback on them for that. I've seen people get their, PayPal or Cash App shut down because of things like that. So we want to get into Veritasium as well, and what led you to create Veritasium and what it actually does versus what the SEC tried to accuse you of
Lisa,
creating.
Lisa, I know
Yes.
we're working on the dynamics, but I think I got a good transition for what Reggie just did. So lead into the next
Okay.
one. So
Yeah, go for it.
Reggie, I totally agree with what you've said about a lot of things in your last response, but I think that it's curious, like that with everything happening in Russia and Canada, a lot of people led to discover Bitcoin and blockchain. What was your story about discovering Bitcoin and blockchain? And how did you come in to learn about both and that technology?
Well, I had a investment advisory blog, or opinion, boom bust blog, and very strong track record. I'm pretty good at valuation, probably because I'm good at detecting BS, bull caca, not BK to use it differently, right? Um, and good at counting money, not good at abstract math, but good at counting money. So I went through that, did very well, predicted Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, not predicted, calculated and observed. Bear Stearns about to collapse. Lehman Brothers have to go down a list of 86, 90, 95 companies well in advance. In 2010, someone asked me to look into Bitcoin. I ignored them. 2011, this is one of my clients. Asked again, I ignored him again. 2012, I'm like, yo, dude, okay. 2013, he's persistent. Let me look into it. I first read the first thing about Bitcoin I read, besides what might have been in the media, which I know actually, was the Bitcoin Wiki. I got towards like the first third. Like, this is a damn good idea. I'm like, wow. By the end of it, I was hooked, right? Then I read the white paper. And then what made me go was very different from everybody else. Not the little case Bs floating up and down in value, not the ability to do money remittances, good, interesting, but not world changing. It's the smart contracts and the ability to program transactions. That's it. That is phenomenal, right? That totally transforms the way things are done. That's the first thing that I saw when I read the Bitcoin Wiki. To date, nobody's been attracted to that as the primary thing because it's the way I think. It's not because I'm smarter or they're not. I'm different. I'm weirder, and that's what happens when you're weird. You see things differently. Oftentimes, but not most times, that's a detriment. That's not a good thing. In this particular instance, it served me well. And,
you have superpowers, and you've used your superpowers for good, not evil. That's the way we look at it.
And so from mid 2013 on, my goal, my job was to use the programmability of conditional value transfer, fancy way of saying, program money just like any other application on a computer or value to do things. And that's where it stands now. It would work very well for Russian oligarchs. Of course, because you have certain lack of liquidity, you can't do everything at once like you could with deep sovereign fiat currencies like the US dollar, euro, pound, or yen. But then again, you don't want to do it all at once because while it might seem deep and liquid and fungible, it is not. So you start well in advance, which means you have to see things, which means you have to take a different perspective. I'm not going to have a political discussion, and I don't know any Russian oligarchs personally, but I do have an issue from an anti-constitutional perspective, like closing down Russian accounts for Russian citizens. Unless the Russian citizens actually did something wrong,
right.
That's fair. Okay. My name was Reggie Abramovich versus Reggie Middleton. Do I now get my accounts closed? By the way, my accounts were all closed because the SEC got an entanglement with me. Didn't prove anything. I didn't admit anything, and nothing was, or I didn't admit or deny anything.
Right. We're gonna do a whole video about the SEC allegations and your reply, which was brilliant, and how that all played out, as well as the comparison to the recent ruling that Ripple had with their case a little bit later. But I wanted to go into what kind of the next step in your career. So you have had so much success with your with all of your financial, the Boom Bust blog, like you said. You were featured, or you won CNBC's stock draft. You've been published in HuffPost, broadcast on CNBC as a regular contributor, Bloomberg, RT News. I mean, definitely recognized in the financial industry, and then found blockchain and started your startup venture to apply your research background skills to digital assets and cryptocurrencies. So where did that idea come from? Did that come to you in the middle of the night as you saw that smart contract capability of Bitcoin? And why did you choose to create those swaps on Bitcoin? How did that all happen for you? How was VERI created?
I'm just looking out the window and it's snowing.
Oh,
March 13th in New York, but okay. As soon as I saw the Bitcoin wiki and the description of smart contracts, it popped in. If you have a financial engineer who's open-minded or a strong investment analyst or portfolio manager who understands tech well, if he reads that, he's going to get it. Okay, the reason why a lot of guys didn't get it back in 2013 is because most of the people who were in it were software developers and engineers. Okay, but guys who have my background, training, experience, or expertise, they get it immediately. There are a lot of guys who are like me who don't get it, but that's because they haven't seen it with an open mind. I could care less. I don't prejudge things. My superpower is I know I don't know everything. And so I don't have to worry about proving myself right or preconceived notions. The only preconceived notion that I have is that I don't know what it is I'm conceiving until I read it. So that's
interesting.
very, very, very well. Sometimes being too smart is not good for you. So moving forward from there, after looking at it, looking at the blockchain and looking at samples of code that were issued and APIs weren't even written at that time. I said a good example, a good use case for the blockchain would be to use as a universal counterparty that won't default. And so I pulled up ISDA agreement, that's International Swap Dealers Association agreement. And that is a plain vanilla boilerplate template of what a swap should look like from an operational and legal perspective. It's about, at that time, it was about 93, 96 pages. Assuming it's 96 pages, 93 and a half pages of that is for counterparty risk, and it makes sure that Lisa gets paid by Jeff, and Jeff doesn't default on Lisa, and Lisa won't default on Jeff. Well, if you use the Bitcoin to do this, and you script it and you program the transactions, you use the blockchain as a universal counterparty. So instead of Lisa being Jeff's counterparty, the blockchain is Lisa's counterparty. Instead of Jeff being Lisa's counterparty, the blockchain is his counterparty. So instead of dealing directly with each other, you deal with the blockchain as that third party, the middleman. But the blockchain doesn't extract rent, economic rent, fancy word for profits it doesn't deserve. And the transactions at the time were very, very low transaction fees. And at that time and to date that I know of, the chain has not been effectively hacked. Okay, there is once or twice they were able to take. There were some instances with updates, etc., but an effective double spend never happened, and taking assets from the blockchain that didn't go according to the code, according to my knowledge, it's never happened. Very strong track record. And so I took the ISDA agreement, from 96 pages, roughly, down to page and a half, maybe two. I programmed it on the blockchain, and the scripting language at that time with Bitcoin, and even right now, is very limited. So we boosted it with Python and did a bunch of things and financial engineered, and we had BTC swap. BTC swap was basically financial derivative that allowed you to trade value by injecting a data feed into the Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin values will go up and down according to the data feed. So Lisa can go long Google stock and short, at that time, short copper. Jeff could go long copper, short Google stock. You actually use copper to buy Google stock. Okay, nobody can default. You didn't need access to the actual inventory because it was data feeds and worked like a charm. The first swap was settled in December of 2013, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
That was early. If you think of Uniswap, which I think took off in 2019 or 2018, at least 5 years in the difference.
Yeah, you were definitely ahead of your time.
Do you want to go towards the use case? You just want to talk about that?
Yeah,
Just
that's
generically. So
more
I'll go with for that one because we figure out how we go back and forth. But Reggie, one thing that's really curious is for someone who's new to Veritasium, how would you describe the use case of the project? What's the purpose for Veritasium existing, and what problem is it solving?
Okay, so Veritasium, the platform and software, or Veritasium the token?
I think people are curious about both, but you can start whichever one that makes more sense to you.
So the token is a prepaid fee to access products, services, intellectual capital. Think of it as buying Microsoft Office. It's a license. Okay. If you purchase Microsoft Office, you get, depending on how much of it you purchase, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook. Okay. You give them money, let's say $120 for the year, $360. I think it costs more than that. $360 for the year, $30 a month, and you can pay it up front, and then you can use the software from Microsoft for up to a year. You can also call them in for assistance, the technical support, et cetera, et cetera. They're amortizing the value of that purchase over 12 months. Okay. And for the first month, you use the first 1/12 of it, and 11/12 of it is unearned revenue that they keep in their books. Veri tokens are the same thing. We don't sell Microsoft Office software, but we do sell the Veritasium platform software, which allowed you initially BTC swap, the first in one iteration. A different company came up with an Ethereum-based platform that had what we call the VEDA, as Veritasium's autonomous dynamic interactive research, where we are very well known for research, Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, bust booms, etc. And also, we predicted the European sovereign debt crisis, which was very timely. And we did it about a year in advance, and Europe started cracking and collapsing. And we were naming countries and banks individually. They were cracking, like almost as if we had the crystal ball. But we didn't have a crystal ball. We had this real magical device called a spreadsheet in math. And you use it, you see a lot of things. I brought that up because we're going over the sovereign risk model again. We're in World War III right now. It was when I woke up, and the thing is, people are conditioned to think of war as bullets, bombs, and tanks, which are being deployed, but on a much smaller scale than the true weapons of war, which is now fintech. And Russia is being ravaged. But off on a tangent, let me go pull this back because I digress. The software platform is the VEDA, the ability to tokenize assets such as precious metals, gold, silver, palladium. We had a demo where we actually had a real-time demonstration where we used tokenized gold as to collateralize a mortgage, not to collateralize a mortgage, to actually make a mortgage and lend people borrow gold, back to gold, convert it to US dollars at will. We have VE rent, which is very, very interesting, where you can rent the prepaid tokens to somebody else, both on a contract rent basis or economic rent. That's a deeper conversation, but it's also very interesting. And so the VERI platform was ahead of its time, hyper functional. Of course, I'm biased, and it was delivered ahead of schedule, just like all of the promises that we made in our marketing material. Not everybody believed in it or believed it, and so we had some litigation issues with an aggressive enforcement agency. But if you look at the facts, everything was done either as agreed or before. We also made some, what appeared to some who may not be well versed and educated in the field, ostentatious and outrageous statements, such as a 1.65 quadrillion addressable market. That's for the basically DeFi and peer-to-peer capital markets, which is a superset of DeFi. So I looked at the numbers about a month ago because I was just found the marketing material, which is all over the SEC litigation paperwork, and I calculated just foreign exchange, right, and currencies, just that. Now, this invention, peer-to-peer capital markets and DeFi, covers real estate and insurance and politics and stocks and bonds and all types of things. I'm focusing on just foreign exchange. We came up with 2.7 trillion quadrillion dollars. One out of, say, 15 different addressable markets, just one. So they were right. I was way off, way, way off. It's much, much larger than I thought. Okay, much larger. And here we are. The one aspect of the VERI tokens and licensing is the intellectual capital. So we had filed patents in April and May of 2013. As Lisa said, they were granted in the US and Japan. We filed more since then. And these patents are foundational technology for the industry, peer-to-peer capital markets, and decentralized finance. Foundational technology means it's the foundation for the technology that the industry is built upon. Good examples of foundational technology would be the integrated circuit. Okay, so if you think about the integrated circuit and how valuable that is for so many things that came after it, computer chips, computers, televisions and cars and radios and phones and TVs and almost everything. Okay, other examples would be the CRISPR, right? The mapping of the human genome. Okay, we don't even know what comes on top of that yet, but we all know it is blocked. The inventor or the alleged inventor that just lost a patent case where she lost access to the patent to, I think, a couple of universities. I don't know. But the value of that is almost incalculable. If you can't calculate it, you're not thinking big enough. So foundational technologies are very, very important. Now, when you have a foundational technology patent, okay, you are most likely going to be attacked by everybody else because they don't want you to have it. Or, more aptly put, they want to have it. A good example, if we go back in history, and I do like to look at how things worked in the past, because it gives you a pretty clear roadmap, not on what's going to happen, but the patterns of how they happen. Because things change over time, but the only thing that remains constant is change. Okay? So an example of a foundational technology patent that was aggressively competed for was the telephone, replicating sound waves through radio signals. So you can look up the patent on the USPTO site. Alexander Graham Bell was the first to patent the telephone. What made it first is interesting. There were two other patents pending. I think the second up would have been first, but the guy had to go to lunch, and he went to lunch, and I think he missed the patent office. And
Are you serious?
It came the next day, and there was another guy who wasn't even. I think he was British. I think he was in the U.S. I have to go over the story because a lot of the details I don't have in memory. But Alexander Bell got the patent. Then he had to fight because they challenged him. Do you think he fought a lot or a little bit?
A lot.
Yeah. So he had challenges to the patent and legal challenges, and they sued him, and they challenged him through the USPTO and through the courts. Take a guess how many lawsuits he had to go through.
I mean, I can't imagine. There are stories and stories in history about the electricity inventions, really nefarious things about people trying to steal each other's IP, or because it really is about who is recorded as the inventor of it, not who actually invented it. And that's where these patents are so important.
Well, Alexander Graham Bell defended against 600 lawsuits.
Wow.
100. And he didn't give up. He didn't stop. He fought and fought 600 lawsuits. But by the time right before he got to 601, they got the message. And then he created the predecessor to the Bell companies. The Alexander Graham Bell's entity became so large and so overreaching, the government itself broke it up.
Right.
What you call the baby bells. Right? And they were so powerful that they started getting powered again. And the biggest baby bell, AT&T, American Telephone and Telegraph. And they're still a behemoth. You're talking pushing over 100 years ago. Not over 100, almost 100 years ago. Okay? Or maybe. Yeah. So I'm tired. The dates escape me, but you get the gist of the conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
So I can attest that, yes, people will sue, and they will go and they will try and take things that they know they don't, have a right to, but they simply use the legal system. You could talk about patents and patent issues, because now that grown-ups are moving into the crypto space, the concept of IP is being given attention. The problem is, it's a little late for that. It should have been given attention from the beginning. You start a business and say, I'm going to get a telephone number and an email address in a few years. Okay, you're free to do that, but you need one now. Okay, you drive a car, I'm going to buy insurance next year because I don't really believe in insurance. Okay, but you need it now. Now, as long as you don't get hit, you don't really feel the need for insurance. But once you get hit, the need for insurance comes. The concept of the entire crypto and distributed ledger space, distributed ledger technology space, is monumental. This will compete with the internet and smartphone for the most significant technology of the last 2 centuries, 20th and 21st century. I think I can say that with full faith and honesty. And people are going to look back on it and wonder in amazement why any professional or anybody would think that they can invent something that is so monumental, so far-reaching, and not want to claim ownership on it.
And not protect it. Well, and don't you think, I've heard you speak on this before about where maybe the fact that the big guys and a lot of the big magazines and articles, news outlets are not speaking about or not bringing up this issue, is to almost mislead the little guys who are inventing these things. And that's where I feel like you really are championing the little guy, the inventor, to go protect his IP, go patent your things, because Wall Street is coming. The big guys are coming, and they're bringing their lawyers, and they're going to take your stuff. And they are telling you that it's this open source. Oh, we're all going to pick flowers and share everything. And we're going to all share that one chicken bone. You know, it's fine. There's enough for everyone. Meanwhile, they're putting your chicken bone in their picnic basket, right? I mean,
Well, right. There was one thing there's one thing that was wrong. Wall
okay.
Street, Wall Street's here. No, Wall
Okay.
Street a while back, but while everybody else was creating open source code, Wall Street was observing open source code, but they were filing patent applications. If you take a look at Bank of America, as early as 2013, they were prolific in filing. Nobody thought it was bad. They looked at, Uniswaps and Aves and compounds and, Shapeshift. And, like the guy that owns Shapeshift is very smart. It seems to be very ethical and very cool. I like him. I don't know him a lot personally, but he seems very cool. But while that was happening, Bank of America, Wells Fargo are filing patent applications. Okay.
But your patents precede those patents.
Almost all of them.
And that is how, with partnerships, projects partnering with you to have licensing, they are protected with that licensing because it precedes any others. Is that correct?
That can get a little complicated from a legal
Okay.
and technical, but if my patent has jurisdiction and it holds up, and we know where the jurisdiction is, and I think
Right.
the jurisdiction is better than many other professionals, but we'll get into that a little later.
Okay.
Holds up, and the patent is very well done, and it's very, very early priority date. So, prior art is going to be very difficult, enabling prior art to use to defeat the patent. And even so, there are ways to still strengthen it. So long story short, it's going to be very difficult to shoot the patent down. We can grant a license and give somebody a protecting avenue to operate with, where if they didn't have it, they would most likely be operating on someone else's patented space, and they can be excluded from the business or charged what can be considered unreasonable royalty. I don't have a reason to do that. I don't have a business reason to do that. So you don't have to worry about my, ethics and morality. It just doesn't make business sense. Now, it makes plenty of business sense if some big tech firm comes in and doesn't want to compete with the little tech firms, or the big financial firms come in, and their culture just excludes the ability to create at that level. And they can't compete with the technology companies. But why, when you can just exclude everybody with a patent?
Right.
A lot of people in the open source community have been taught patents are bad. You've been misled and miseducated. If you just take a look at history or what patents are, common sense is if you invent something, you want to have ownership of it. Just because you own something doesn't mean you can't let other people use it.
Right.
The entire gist of having a patent is to be able to control your invention and make sure it's not taken from you. So if you want to open source it, you can open source it. Okay. If you want to do X, Y, and Z, you can do it. But if you take a look at all the leading DeFi projects, they all have the same: patent is bad, intellectual property protection is bad, you're going to open source it. And then guess what happened? They had to walk into the real world and start to do business. They took in investors like venture capitalists, okay, and large sums of money. And these guys want a return on their money. And so let's use Uniswap as an example, okay? Uniswap got started by taking someone else's intellectual property. That was the birth of Uniswap. They forked Bancor, okay? Luckily, Bancor infringed on our intellectual property on our patent, okay? But Uniswap went and forked Bancor, never bothered to check if the intellectual property was actually Bancor's to give away, but Bancor didn't give it away. They open sourced it because that was the thing to do of the day. Now you can open source it and it could still be patented, but I'm oversimplifying things, okay? And so Uniswap made some changes to Bancor's model, and then created Uniswap, which floundered for a little bit, allegedly, until this guy, Richard Hart, started using it in Hex, and he's a very strong marketer. And so he, according to him, I didn't actually research it, popularize Uniswap. Now Uniswap is something very big. And then somebody said, wow, Uniswap is really making a lot of money. So they went into GitHub and they did what Uniswap did. They pushed the copy fork button and they took Uniswap's intellectual property, which is a property that Uniswap took from Bancor. They made a couple of changes, particularly in the liquidity model, how they compensated those who gave liquidity. And they took within a week or so over 50% of Uniswap's liquidity, their users. Over 50%. What's the difference? Uniswap had to pay several $1 million, say $10, $20 million, to develop it. Okay, so they had investors and they developed a new code that they went for from Bancor. Bancor raised $150 million in their ICO because they did it right about the time I did ours. And they used that money to develop their core, to license technology from university, professor, etc. They spent that money, Uniswap forked it for free. Uniswap spent more money, right? Did some customizations. SushiSwap forked it for free. SushiSwap put some money in, made some customizations, did very well by taking all that liquidity from Uniswap. And then this entity called PancakeSwap came over, backed by Binance, and they took SushiSwap's IP. PancakeSwap changes, right? Customize it for Binance and the Binance Smart Chain, and on down the line.
It's like the telephone game.
Right. So the common theme, there are two common themes. There's intellectual property that costs real money and time and manpower to create, and it was taken both without explicit permission and to the detriment of the entity it was taken from. Okay. And someone else profited from it. That happened 4 times simultaneously. The initial IP belonged to Veritasium. So Bancor, Uniswap, SushiSwap, and PancakeSwap all infringe because they never even wrote the original code. They just copied it. Okay. Bancor wrote original code, but they didn't do an IP due diligence to find out that the original code was our IP or based upon our IP. So that story shows how quickly the Veritasium IP is reverberating throughout the industry. Very few entities are actually running things from scratch. And the way it was written, the industry is moving on towards the patent. Normally, when you patent something, as more time goes by, the industry moves away from it because it develops and evolves. This patent was able to see into the future because I knew, or I strongly suspected, that this would be used for more advanced financial applications and less Bitcoin trading and remittances and watching numbers go up and down. And voila, I guess right. Possibly luck, but a lucky guess that's correct is a correct guess nonetheless, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, it's also used, Jeff had brought this up, that it's also used outside of the crypto. And I guess that goes to the, what would that apply to more of in the traditional financial industry and also in, would that also be tokenizing? Well, I guess that's crypto tokenizing precious metals.
Let me try and clarify. Let me finish this story.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, Bancor learned their lesson, I think, but they're not as popular as any of those other projects. I have no idea why. But what Uniswap did was they decided we need to protect our intellectual property. Too late to patent it because someone else patented it. So they took their open source license and made it a restrictive commercial license. And so for 2 years, you can't use Uniswap's code commercially. So they went against this open source ethos. The reason is because they started making money, they had to become a real business. You can't sell something that someone else can take for free and resell. Okay. And then all those other projects did. Compound, Finance, Aave. Later on today, I'm going to tweet the terms and conditions of OpenSea. And then you tell me if this open source, nobody should own IP or ideas is really a good idea. You know, OpenSea never even considered it. Those who did consider it were robbed, basically. Now, moving on, the building blocks of peer-to-peer capital markets, or DeFi, are used or are being employed by large centralized institutions, because within these centralized institutions, you still have a much more significant increase in efficiency by using distributed ledger technology. So almost all the commercial banks, NASDAQ, if you take a look at our patent, Google Reggie Middleton patent, and then go to the Google Patents link and click it, and then on the right-hand side, scroll down till you see the cited by link. You'll click that, and it goes to show all the companies that had to cite our patent to be able to apply for a patent in the PCT areas. That's the countries of the world that subscribe to a global patent database. And it's now at 66 companies, and a new company is being added every week or so. So when you cite a patent, that means that you have to admit that patent's idea came before yours, and yours has to rest on top of that. So basically, if it's foundational technology, almost anything that's in the space is going to have to cite that patent. Okay. And examples of who cited the patent: Wells Fargo, Bank of America, IBM, Microsoft, NASDAQ, you name it, Allstate Insurance, Dell, who's who in Silicon Valley. We only had to cite a very few companies, and almost all those companies, their patents have expired. So the fact that we had to cite very few entities meant that we had a novel and unique idea. The fact that all these companies had to cite ours means that our idea is pervasive and is being moved into by the industry itself. So as you scroll on the right, see the right there?
Yeah.
Those hyperlinks right to the right at the top of the page. One of
at the top.
No, right below you see the blue box?
Yes.
Scroll down 8 inches. Okay, stop right there. You see the links in the middle of the page? Okay, so one of those says cited, the other one says cited by. So you click the cited by, and
yes.
Yeah, if you click that, it'll scroll down. You see a list of all the companies. There you go.
Oh my goodness.
N-Chain had to cite 14 times. N-Chain is a IP holding company for Craig Wright. Craig Wright is the guy who alleges he's Satoshi Nakamoto. A lot of negative feelings around there, but one thing people are ignoring is the man seems to have filed about 1,800 patent applications. He may have been granted about 800. That's a lot. Assuming 99% of BS, I'm not saying that's the case, but let's make an assumption that almost all of them are BS. That's still 80 strong patents, right?
Wow.
IBM don't even have 80 blockchain patents application granted.
I mean, this has got Microsoft, Wells Fargo on here a bunch. I mean, all kinds of.
They're all over my IP.
Yeah.
Not just what TD Bank.
One.
And
Reggie, this list is certainly, I mean, it's a who's who in the financial market, but considering that one of the missions of Veritasium at this point in the DAO is to establish partnerships, is this a list of potential partners in the near future, or is that a good foundational list of the people that Veritasium should be reaching out to?
It is a good list of potential partners, but there's more that goes into it. They have a reason to partner. Chances are there's a material chance that if they bring a product or service to market that's using the technology that they're trying to patent, that you see there, and you see the patent numbers and the description of the patent, there's a good chance if they bring that to market, it's going to infringe on our patent. If it infringes too much, the USPTO is not going to grant them the patent. But if there's a tangential, infringement, it may go through, and there's a good chance they will partner with us. Trying to defeat a patent that you had to cite, and if you get your own patent, may be antithetical to your cause, because if you kill that patent, you kill yours too. So, but patent law is an arcane legal expertise. Okay, law is bad enough as it is. Patent law is the equivalent of frontal lobe brain surgery as compared to your general internist. And then crypto patent law is equivalent of frontal brain surgery on aliens. So very, very, very tight specialty.
Very specific, very specific. Well, we really appreciate you taking all this time and just showing us a little bit more about, telling us about yourself, your journey to crypto, through crypto, and bringing Veritasium to the world, and then teaching us about VERI. I feel like I have so much more of a better grasp about it, and how it's going to really be such a benefit to token holders and people in the crypto space, not just the crypto space, but it looks like the financial industry, the individuals. It really benefits the individual all the way around. So thank you so much. I'm looking forward to our next video as well.
I did all that talking and I never did answer your question. I was
Oh,
setting up the foundation, like I carried over the foundation, never answered the question.
you're
Very,
good.
in addition to getting access to software and services, much of that software had to be deprecated and wound down because of the regulatory litigation issues. But it can be used. It initially was supposed to be used to give access to the IP, those patents. And you see who cited the patents who probably wouldn't need access to it. Those companies that you listed and many more. A lot of people who are concerned that Reggie Middleton has these big, powerful patents that can shut down, DeFi. They don't understand the space. If you take a look at who had to cite the patents, almost none of those companies are DeFi companies. The only ones that really can be identified is Enchain, the Craig Wright company. Okay, almost everybody else is traditional finance and traditional big finance and traditional big tech, and I mean very big. You know, Coinbase, Microsoft, IBM, Wells Fargo, TD Bank, Royal Bank of Canada. Those are big companies. You know, you'll also see if you do more research, JP Morgan is right up there, like $10 trillion, $8 trillion balance sheet. So, the DeFi companies, most of them, many of them, not most, do infringe. Okay, but that is not the market. Okay, the market is traditional tech and finance as they move into, this space. So, back in the days, you had internet companies, and people like, well, this is an internet company, and we'll buy internet company stock. Can you think of an internet company right now, off the top of your head, quickly?
Every company is an internet company.
Right.
I mean,
And if you go back to the early days of see, I'm tired. The guy that created Thomas Edison, right? You had electricity companies. Now it would be foolish to think about what's an electricity company.
yeah. Or a phone company. What company operates without a phone?
That
Yeah.
so, understanding the breadth and depth of the addressable market, even I make mistakes because I said 1.65 quadrillion. Quadrillion is the number after a trillion. And I actually got accused of fraud for that. And maybe it was fraud because I really underestimated the market a lot, but I didn't intend to. So it's not really fraud, right? From my perspective. Now, quiet. But it was simply a calculation error. Okay. Predicting the future is very hard. And the batteries in my crystal ball died last week, and I haven't yet. So,
We'll give you a pass.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, they printed a lot of money. Maybe that's part of it, but I don't think they printed quadrillions just yet.
Actually, they're on the tear. They're not joking with the printing. So
It's
it's
crazy.
interesting, very, very interesting times. I'm very, very excited. I would like to make an official announcement that I would allow VERI tokens to be accepted, but I'm still, I can't discuss what legal counsel has told me outright because I don't want to break privilege. But I'd like to see it happen. But if it doesn't happen, there are many other avenues of redress for the VERI token holders. The SEC stripped me of all my personal and corporate capital, and offer to the token holders. According to calculations from members of the VeriDAO, 99 point something percent of the Veri holders didn't want to take the deal. I think out of 10,000 Veri holders, 200 and change accepted it in terms of wallets, which is interesting. So maybe I'm not the only one that doesn't trust that particular entity.
I even saw some conversation that it wasn't being returned to people. So I don't know. That was just rumor. I don't have any confirmation of that, but it was that the funds weren't, there was the VERI fund or whatever, but it wasn't flowing, was what I was reading on. So
I'm totally hands off of it.
Yeah, you don't have information on that. Do you have, as we were just talking a little bit, just on our way out the door, do you still have, and I know you don't call them predictions or calculations, or do you have calculations of the future of the U.S. financial system specifically? Are we headed into that next Lehman crash with them printing money the way they're printing right now, with the economy where it is? Can you give people a little glimpse into, I know your crystal ball, the batteries broke and all that, but do you have the last report for everyone that you can leave us with?
Well, the crystal ball is broken, but the spreadsheet's still working.
Okay.
We have a very, very advanced sovereign risk model. It was built upon an FBI model for social unrest and contagion. And we built in the global macro questions, on top of geopolitical. The environment is ripe for it. Now, this is the most volatile it's been since I've been alive. Most people don't realize it because the nature of war has changed. When I said we're in World War III, I'm not being bombastic, and I'm not trying to, be sensationalist. This is it, okay? But fintech and cyber warfare does plenty of damage. Potentially, you'll see more damage than actually physical bombs and planes. Starving to death is probably more painful than getting shot. So I can tell you from experience. The model is being updated. It takes a lot of work, many man months. But because this is our third time going through the model, the first time we did it was during the European sovereign debt crisis, or right before it, we saw it coming. So that was used to predict the European sovereign debt crisis. Started in 2010, but nobody realized it. It's 2011, 12, and 13 when it hit. I did it again right before COVID because, we were ready to go then. And again, not many people were able to see it. And then COVID hit and caused a totally different set of circumstances to occur. And getting out of COVID boosted debt to GDP ratios in all the so-called developed, and I hate calling them developed, militaristic and larger economy nations. And as the debt to GDP ratio shot up, money printing shot up as well. And the potential for monetary inflation or actual monetary inflation increased while actual economic growth lagged. That's a perfect scenario for stagflation. If you go to boombuzzblog.com, you do a search for stagflation, you see the US stagflation report that we did November 2020. That was 2020 November, a year and a half ago. Now people are starting to call about stagflation. Then it's when you should have done it because you had the chance to prepare. Those Russian oligarchs are trying to transform their wealth. Should have, saw me then. The new sovereign risk report will be out in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to give a lot of the stuff out. I don't know if I'm giving it out for free or not, but I use it as educational marketing and infomercials. I believe an educated consumer is the best customer. It ties in very, very heavily with the stuff that heavyweights coming in. I can open a lot of eyes. We're also doing a forensic analysis of block. I posted the first series of the first document, analytical document, very interesting. block has gone through a decent amount of IP litigation itself. It started with the origin of block. They deprived the inventor of Square. The company used to be called Square, and the inventor of Square was kicked out of the company. But he was a patent holder, and they fought over that. Wow, isn't that the guy who created COPA and said that you want to defend everybody against, the patent boogeyman?
The
So
irony. Yeah.
the patent boogeyman, like control, is a boogeyman myth created by big tech to vilify patent holders. But in terms of litigation, almost all those patent holders are small businesses and entrepreneurs trying to defend their property. Okay, not $1 trillion company.
Well, that's where I think you're just such a great example to, we do have all these really inventive, entrepreneur-minded people in cryptocurrency that are building this new world for us. And I think you're a great example. And I think of you as like the big brother of crypto. And they may not see it yet, but you're really going to end up protecting the space. And I'm honored to be part of the team trying to support the work that you're doing and be here beside Jeff and helping get the word out to everybody. So Reggie, thank you for sharing your story and the story of Veritasium. We're excited to be here and be part of the VeriDAO and contributing to a team of people that are really here for the space. And we're going to be bringing on more people and more news stories about that apply to what's going on with Veritasium, as well as other things in the cryptocurrency space. We'll be back with Reggie talking about the SEC allegations and that timely XRP ruling that just came out recently. So see you guys next time. Thanks.